Why type 2 diabetes can be so dangerous? What if I told you the damage that can lead to blindness, kidney failure, heart disease, stroke, or even amputation may begin years before you're ever diagnosed with type 2 diabetes? Today we're solving one of the biggest metabolic medical mysteries. How can one disease, diabetes, damage so many completely different body parts? The eyes have nothing in common with your kidneys, and your kidneys have nothing in common with your feet. Your feet have nothing in common with your brain, so why can type 2 diabetes affect all of them? Most people think they know the answer, it's just high blood sugar. But that's only one piece of the puzzle. Today I'm going to show you 3 clues that finally answer that question, and I want you to stay with me. Because clue number 3 is the piece that brings everything together. And once you understand it, you'll never think about type 2 diabetes the same way again. Hi, I'm Dr. Kim. I'm a board-certified naturopathic doctor, and I've been in clinical practice for over 40 years. I look at blood work almost every day, and after years of looking at lab patterns, I've learned that the numbers most people are told normal often tell a problem is already coming if you know what to look for. On my channel, every week we solve metabolic medical mysteries that help you recognize your symptoms, understand your lab work, and know what to do next, so you can change your future before type 2 diabetes does. So, why is type 2 diabetes so dangerous? This is clue number 1. The disease usually starts long before the diagnosis. This first clue surprises almost everyone. Most people think type 2 diabetes begins when the blood sugar becomes too high. But in many people, the process began many years earlier. Long before the diagnosis, your body may have already been struggling to keep your blood sugar under control. So what is exactly happening? In most cases, type 2 diabetes doesn't start because your body stops making insulin. It starts because your cells gradually stop responding to it. This is called insulin resistance. Your pancreas notices blood sugar isn't getting into your cells efficiently, so it works harder and harder, pumping out more insulin to compensate. At first, your blood sugar may stay completely normal, even while insulin levels are climbing. That's why millions of people are told their blood sugar is fine, while the underlying problem continues to worsen. Think of insulin as a key. Its job is to unlock your cells so glucose can move out of the bloodstream and be used for energy inside the cells. But when your cells become resistant, it's like the lock has become rusty. The key still exists, but it doesn't work nearly as well. Your pancreas responds by making more keys, which is more insulin, and insulin is a hormone to force those doors open. That can work for years. Eventually, though, the pancreas cannot keep up. Blood sugar begins to rise, and that's when many people are finally diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. This is one reason I pay attention to a fasting insulin lab test result. It's one piece of the puzzle. Not a standalone diagnostic test, but it can provide information that fasting glucose lab test alone cannot. It may miss it. That helps explain why someone can be told everything looks normal, while also experiencing extreme fatigue, sugar cravings, weight around the waist, and other warning signs. The metabolic changes may already be developing, and that's what makes this disease so deceptive. The diagnosis of type 2 diabetes often comes after the process has already been underway for as many as 10 years or more. Now, let me be very clear. Insulin resistance does not guarantee you'll develop type 2 diabetes, and having type 2 diabetes does not guarantee you'll develop blindness, kidney disease, heart disease, or any other complication. Many people dramatically lower their risk through early detection, appropriate medical care, healthy lifestyle changes, and good blood sugar management. So today's discussion is about understanding risk, not predicting your future. And that's important because if you don't understand the whole puzzle, you may miss your best opportunity to change your future. Before we uncover the second clue, let me ask you something. If today's first clue has you wondering whether insulin resistance could be already affecting you, don't guess. Take my free 1-minute insulin resistance risk assessment. It only takes about a minute. Then email me your score. I personally review every assessment score that's emailed to me, and I'll explain what your results may mean based on the information you provide. You'll find the link in the description below this video. So now let's uncover clue number 2. And this clue completely changed the way I think about type 2 diabetes. And I think it's going to change the way you think about it too. So now we know something very surprising. Type 2 diabetes often begins years before the diagnosis. But that still doesn't solve the mystery. How can one metabolic disease eventually affect organs that seem to have absolutely nothing in common? The answer isn't what most people think. And once you understand it, the rest of today's mystery starts falling into place. This is clue number 2. And here is the hidden connection. The process leading to type 2 diabetes often begins years before the diagnosis, but that still leaves us with the question we started with. How can one disease eventually affect your eyes, your kidneys, your nerves, your heart, and your brain? I kept coming back to that question over and over. These organs do completely different jobs. They're made of different tissues. They don't even sit near each other in the human body. So why would they all become vulnerable? Then I realized something that changed the way I think about type 2 diabetes. They all depend on one thing: healthy circulation. Think of your circulatory system as your body's delivery network. Every second of every day, it delivers oxygen, nutrients, hormones, and immune cells while carrying away waste. When that delivery network functions well, your organs receive what they need to thrive. When it's placed under years of metabolic stress like insulin resistance, these organs become more vulnerable. That was my first real aha moment. Type 2 diabetes isn't simply about elevated blood sugar. It's about what can happen when the system that supports every organ in your body has been stressed over many years. Now let me show you what I mean. Let's begin with your eyes. Here's something fascinating. Did you know that your eye doctor is one of the very few health professionals who can actually look directly at tiny blood vessels in your eyes without surgery? During a dilated eye exam, they may see changes long before you notice a problem with your vision. High blood sugar can quietly damage the tiny blood vessels that nourish the retina. Because that damage often develops gradually, many people don't notice a problem until it's progressed. Vision loss doesn't usually happen overnight. Changes often develop very gradually. This is another reminder that this disease often whispers before it ever shouts. Now think about your kidneys. They never take a day off. Every minute, every hour, every day, they're filtering your blood. In fact, your kidneys filter about 180 liters of fluid every single day through millions of microscopic filtering units. They perform this remarkable job quietly without asking for any attention. When metabolic dysfunction persists over many years, those tiny filters can gradually lose efficiency. It's usually a very slow process. Not because your kidneys suddenly become weak, but because the system supporting them has been under stress for a long, long time. The picture is becoming clearer, I hope, for you, and at this point, you may already be seeing the connection. But we're still missing an important piece, because healthy circulation explains part of today's mystery, but not all of it. So stay with me. The final clue is one that made everything make sense for me. I had to really think about this. Now let's talk about your nerves for a second. Have you ever wondered why type 2 diabetes so often affects the feet first? It's because the longest nerves in your body are often the most vulnerable when circulation and metabolism are impaired over time. Some people first notice numbness. Others notice tingling, burning, or pain. Many assume, hey, I'm just getting older. And sometimes that's true. But sometimes those symptoms deserve a closer look because they may be telling you something very important. So one day I had a client ask me a question. She said, Dr. Kim, my eye doctor found changes. My feet are tingling, and now my PCP is worried about my kidneys. What do those possibly have to do with each other? You know, someone is finally asking the right question, I thought to myself, because once you stop looking at each symptom by itself and start looking at the systems supporting the entire body, the puzzle begins to come together. And at that point, I thought I had the answer. Then I realized I didn't. Healthy circulation explains a lot, but it still didn't explain everything. I kept asking myself, what else is happening beneath the surface? When I found the answer, everything finally clicked, and that's the third clue. But before we uncover that final clue, let me ask you something. If today's video has you wondering whether insulin resistance could already be affecting you, don't guess. Take my free 1-minute insulin resistance risk assessment. It only takes about a minute, and when you're finished, email me your score. The link is in the description below. Now, let's uncover clue number 3, because this final clue doesn't just explain how type 2 diabetes affects the body. It's the damage you never feel. So, we've uncovered 2 important clues. The process often begins years before the diagnosis, and we've learned that every organ depends on healthy circulation and healthy metabolism. But one question still remained in my mind. Why can damage continue even when someone feels perfectly fine? That question led me to the third and final clue. The body doesn't usually become sick overnight. It changes one tiny step at a time. One cell, one blood vessel, one organ, one day after another. That's why type 2 diabetes can be so dangerous and deceptive. The changes are often microscopic long before they're noticeable. Let me show you what I mean. Imagine spilling syrup on your kitchen counter. At first, it's only sticky. You barely notice it, then you leave it there for a few days, and it begins to harden. Now it's much harder to remove. Something similar can happen inside your body. When glucose stays elevated in the bloodstream, over long periods of time, some of it begins attaching to proteins throughout the body. This process is called glycation. In fact, your hemoglobin A1C test measures glucose attached to hemoglobin inside our red blood cells. That's why it reflects your average blood glucose over the past 2 to 3 months. But hemoglobin isn't the only protein glucose can attach to. It can also attach to proteins in your blood vessels, in your nerves, your kidneys, eyes, and other tissues. Over time, these sticky compounds called advanced glycation end products, or AGEs, continue to cause inflammation, oxidative stress, and tissue damage throughout the entire body. But AGEs aren't the whole story either. They're just one important piece of the puzzle. Researchers believe they contribute to making tissues stiffer and less able to function normally. At the same time, chronic inflammation, oxidative stress, and other metabolic changes may also contribute to damage throughout the body. No single process explains every complication. It's the combination of these processes working quietly, year after year, that was the final clue. And suddenly, everything happened to make sense to me. So now let's go back to the question we started with. How can one disease affect so many different organs? because it isn't attacking one organ. It's gradually affecting the system those organs depend on: healthy metabolism, healthy circulation, and healthy cellular function. When these systems are stressed for years, over time the damage spreads throughout the body. These blood vessels in the eyes begin to weaken, threatening vision. The kidneys gradually lose their ability to filter waste. Nerves can become damaged, causing numbness, tingling, or pain. Larger arteries feeding the heart and brain become more susceptible to plaque buildup, increasing the risk of heart attack and stroke. That's why type 2 diabetes isn't just a blood sugar disease. It's a disease that can have such widespread and dangerous effects that it can affect nearly every organ in your body. Not because it's one disease attacking 5 organs, but because it's one metabolic disorder affecting systems in the entire body depends upon. That is today's medical mystery solved. There is good news, is there? Yes, but now I want to leave you with something even more important. Everything we've discussed today is about risk, not certainty. Insulin resistance does not guarantee you'll develop type 2 diabetes. Type 2 diabetes does not guarantee blindness, kidney disease, organ damage, nerve damage, heart disease, or stroke. Many people have significantly reduced the risk through early diagnosis, appropriate medical care, healthy nutrition, physical activity, medications when appropriate, and consistent follow-up with their healthcare team. So don't wait for abnormal hemoglobin A1C to know if you're at risk. If you're concerned about your metabolic health, if today's video has you wondering whether you're at risk and if you want to catch metabolic problems early, these are the blood tests I believe are the most important to understand. Fasting insulin, it's one of the earliest blood tests that may signal insulin resistance, often years before blood sugar becomes abnormal. Hemoglobin A1C shows your average blood sugar over the last 2 to 3 months. High sensitive CRP, it's the marker for inflammation and the overall context for cardiovascular risk. Lipoprotein A is an inherited cardiovascular risk factor that's usually measured once in a lifetime. A lipid panel helps evaluate cholesterol and triglycerides and is part of your overall metabolic picture. Notice that I didn't say these tests diagnose anything. They each provide a piece of the puzzle. When you put these pieces together, you can often recognize problems years before type 2 diabetes develops, and so can I. These are some of the tests I discuss most often when evaluating metabolic health. Because the earlier you recognize metabolic dysfunction, the greater the opportunity to change its course. Because by the time type 2 diabetes is diagnosed, the disease process has often been developing for years and years. The goal is to recognize these changes while there's still time to intervene. And the more opportunity you have to change the direction of the story. So here's what I want you to remember from all of this we discussed today. Type 2 diabetes doesn't become dangerous overnight. It becomes dangerous when years of silent damage goes unnoticed. That's why understanding your symptoms, recognizing the early warning signs, and knowing your lab values can make such a difference. My goal isn't to scare you. It's to help you recognize the problem early enough to change your future. Do you know where you are in this journey? If you don't, please don't guess. Use your free risk assessment as the first step toward understanding your own risk. The link is in the description below. It only takes about a minute, and when you're finished, email me your score. The real question isn't whether type 2 diabetes is dangerous, really. The real question is how many years before a diagnosis does the damage actually begin? That's the question I'll continue helping you with and answering for you on this channel. If today's medical mystery helped you connect the dots, I'd love to hear from you. Please leave me a comment and tell me the one thing that surprised you the most. If you're new here, please subscribe, because every week we solve another metabolic medical mystery together to help you recognize your symptoms, understand your lab work, and know what to do next. I'm Dr. Kim, the insulin resistance doctor. And remember, type 2 diabetes doesn't usually announce itself with pain. It often whispers for years before you ever hear the shouts. The good news is, if you learn to recognize those whispers earlier, you may have the opportunity to change how your story ends. Until next time, stay proactive, and I'll see you in the next Metabolic Medical Mystery.